Kavanaugh clearing a key hurdle and setting up a final vote for tomorrow, but not without some last-minute drama. We're going outnumbered overtime now. I'm Harris Faulkner. The suspense is gripping. The margin was so slim, 51-49. The Senate voted to advance Judge Brett Kavanaugh's nomination for that final vote. Democrat Joe Manchin joined Republicans, Susan Collins and Jeff Flake, in voting yes to end the debate. Republican Lisa Murkowski voted no. But what Manchin and Collins will do tomorrow is still at this point unknown. Senator Collins says she will announce her final decision on how she'll vote tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern today. And as for Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, we are hearing he is a yes now to send Judge Kavanaugh to the nation's highest court. Unless, quote, something big changes, but he says he doesn't know what that would be. All this amid what has become a bitter and divided nomination process. Democrats calling the latest FBI investigation into Kavanaugh a sham. The judge making his closing argument in an op-ed last night, admitting he may have been too emotional at his hearing, but would remain an impartial judge on the high court. Tensions high ahead of tomorrow's expected vote. Watch it.
To my mind, what the Senate just voted for was to end the games, the character assassination, and the intimidation tactics that unfortunately have characterized so much of this confirmation process.
I hope that today's vote isn't indicative of the final vote. I hope we can still defeat Brett Kavanaugh. At the end of the day, you know, it's going to be a historic vote. Every member is going to have to make their decision. Every member is going to be remembered as to where they were and how they voted.
Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel now reporting from Capitol Hill with the latest. Mike?
Harris, good afternoon. With that vote earlier, 51-49, every vote counts. Earlier, we had Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley arguing passionately on the Senate floor that Judge Brett Kavanaugh has not been treated fairly.
We had a campaign of distraction from his outstanding qualifications, a campaign of destruction of this fine individual. What we have learned is the resistance that has existed since the day after the November 2016 election is centered right here on Capitol Hill. They have encouraged mob rule.
The top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, Grassley's counterpart, argues the impact Judge Kavanaugh could have on the high court for decades.
He would be a deciding vote on the most important issues affecting our country and every American for generations to come. Based on all the factors we have before us, I do not believe Judge Kavanaugh has earned this seat.
And the Senate Democratic leader urged his colleagues to vote no.
Democrat and Republican, for all the controversy, all the heavy-handedness of the process, all the hyperbole and vilification of both sides, there's always hope that the Senate can save itself. We can salvage some decency here at the end.
It has been a brutal process for Judge Brett Kavanaugh, forced to defend his name and his integrity at a high-stakes hearing last week. And the Senate Majority Leader argues Democrats have gotten desperate, willing to do just about anything to stop Judge Kavanaugh.
Well, we all know what happened next. Uncorroborated allegations of the most sensitive, most serious sort were quickly sharpened into political weapons.
It has been nasty and intense. You can expect plenty of arm twisting between now and the final confirmation vote. Harris?
Mike Emanuel, thank you very much. A source is telling Fox News now that the White House is confident that Judge Kavanaugh has the votes to be confirmed to the high court. Fox top story with the big interviews first. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. Sarah, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me on, Harris. Always great to see you.
Likewise. Let's start with the big news that you think at the White House that you have the votes. Why?
Look, we feel great about where we are right now. Obviously, we would love to see all 100 senators get behind and support Judge Kavanaugh, but we think that the vote that took place this morning was certainly a step in the right direction, and we look forward to seeing him confirmed later this weekend.
You know, we're waiting for some more news to break. We have heard already from Senator Jeff Flake that he is a yes and unless something big were to change. He can't imagine what that would be. Susan Collins, another Republican kind of on the fence in all of this, is supposed to let us know, the world, the nation, how she will vote at 3 o'clock. What is the president doing on this Friday as this news is trickling in?
The president is obviously aware of everything that's taking place, but at the same time, this is a president who likes to do a lot of things at one time. He's going to be signing pieces of legislation later today, continuing meetings with staff, but we're watching this very closely, and certainly those of us at the White House will be tuned in to hear Senator Collins' speech later this afternoon. We think her vote earlier this morning was a great thing, and we certainly hope that she will follow suit of what she did this morning and do that again in the final vote for Judge Kavanaugh.
Yeah, it's interesting. Historically, a vote for cloture is sometimes an indication of how an individual will vote moving forward. After what we've seen with Senator Jeff Flake recently in the last few days, we can't really determine that by history so much anymore. What is the strategy of the White House now? Reports that the president and White House staff have been on the phone with certain senators. Who are you talking with?
We're going to continue. We've been in constant contact with a number of senators since this process began, and we're going to continue those efforts right up until the last minute because this is such an important moment in our country's history, and we want to make sure we're doing every single thing we can to get the final vote done and get Judge Kavanaugh confirmed, and we hope to see that happen this weekend.
You know, the timing of it, too, is when many Americans will be able to maybe pause on a weekend and take a look at history being made up or down on Judge Kavanaugh. So the timing of it is interesting. I want to talk about, though, just your impression, because you started out with, wouldn't it be great if you got everybody? And there was a day when you get 90% of the senators, you know, to put their politics aside, and you see Dems and Republicans together. Are you surprised that Joe Manchin was a yes to move the nomination process forward, a Democrat, West Virginia?
Frankly, I'm surprised more Democrats aren't supporting Judge Kavanaugh. We've seen from the very beginning the impeccable qualifications that he has. And you're very right in saying that this isn't supposed to be a partisan battle. This isn't supposed to be a political battle. This is supposed to be a determination on whether or not somebody has the right temperament, the right qualifications to sit on the Supreme Court. And we've seen every bit of the things that you should see in a Supreme Court justice in Brett Kavanaugh, and it's a shame that it has become a political battle, and it's no longer about the Supreme Court, but it's about partisan politics. We've seen the Democrats play just a completely different game than has ever been done before, and that's a real disgrace to the country. It's a disgrace to the process, but hopefully maybe some of them will change their mind and get on board and do the right thing and be part of this process moving forward over the weekend and be part of the group that helps confirm Judge Kavanaugh.
Now, I want to talk about also kind of what was a surprise in terms of the process, and that's to see an opinion piece by the nominee on the eve of a cloture vote, Judge Kavanaugh. What does the White House think about this so-called closing argument and whether it was needed?
Look, Judge Kavanaugh has been transparent throughout the beginning of the process. He's put forward more documentation, more paper, more hours of testimony than any other nominee in history. This is another moment of him saying, look, I'm an open book. I've been transparent from the beginning of this entire process. I'm going to continue to be that way. And you can expect that same type of mentality and temperament when I sit on the court.
You know, there seemed to be a shift in Democrats' criticism of the judge going from the allegations of misconduct against him to how emotional he got. And in the op-ed last night, Kavanaugh said, I was very emotional last Thursday, more than I have ever been. I might have been too emotional at times. I know that my tone was sharp and I said a few things I should not have said. Is that helpful?
For me, I think that in a moment where if you feel you're being wrongfully accused, you're defending not just yourself, but your family, your family's name, and frankly, the entire process that allows somebody to become a Supreme Court justice, you have every right to be emotional, every right to be tough, every right to fight back and defend yourself against those accusations. I thought his tone in last week's hearing was exactly what you would expect from somebody going through what Brett Kavanaugh and his family have been through over the last several weeks. And I think that he's going to make a great Supreme Court justice when we see his confirmation go through later this weekend.
We are learning sometime between 3:30 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow afternoon, Saturday, with the nation and the world watching. We will see a vote on Judge Kavanaugh. I want to give you last word on what this means in terms of the president's building a legacy.
I think this will be one of the most impactful things he does. The president has had an incredibly successful first 2 years in office. The economy's booming. He's making trade deals that people said were never going to be possible. He is securing the border. He is doing one thing after the next that he promised to do on the campaign. And what you're going to see take place this weekend is another fulfillment of the president's promise to the American people that he made. And I hope we'll also see that reflected in people wanting to continue that progress when they vote in November.
I'm looking at that 49-year low, 3.7% of unemployment. And what you said, Sarah Sanders, about bringing the country together after this is all over, that's where we all hope that we can get, no matter how people feel about the situation with Judge Kavanaugh. Sarah Sanders, White House press secretary, on the program today. Thank you.
Thank you, Harris.
For reaction from the other side of the political aisle now, Congresswoman Val Demings, a member of the House Judiciary Committee, the Florida Democrat, was also part of the group that stood in silence to protest Judge Kavanaugh at the Senate Judiciary hearing. Good to see you today. I'm so grateful for your time, Congresswoman.
Good to see you, Harris. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. I want to talk about how we go forward. Because this has been so incendiary and so vitriolic, the fight over Judge Brett Kavanaugh and the allegations that came from Dr. Ford. How do we go forward? How do you picture it?
Well, let me just say this. It has been painful to watch really from the very beginning, and it was interesting today to hear our Chairman Grassley talk about the U.S. Senate hitting rock bottom, because it hit rock bottom under his leadership. Look, we have focused on individuals during this process, but this is really about what is best for America, what is best for the American people. Picking not only a great scholar, a great jurist, but a person of integrity to serve on the highest court of the land. That is really what we Democrats or Republicans should be focused on. I just do not believe, as someone who has served as a public servant most of my adult life, served in law enforcement, did not make my decisions based on political party, I do not believe that the current nominee rises to the best that we have to offer. And look, moving forward, we saw the vote today. There'll be an additional vote. We don't know yet how that's going to turn out, but it is important to me as a member of the House that we do come together and heal the wounds that are out there.
And how do you do that? I mean, I guess I'm looking for specifics, because we've seen so many specifics and how nasty it can get.
Well, and see, that's part of the problem. If we go back to, as a former law enforcement officer, a detective, I investigated cases of sexual assault. Many of the victims waited months, years before they came forward. When you listen to, and if we could just all take a deep breath and lay our politics aside, which
that's
I
what
believe
Sarah Sanders
has just gotten us so divided.
Yeah.
If we take a deep breath and look at the statement from Dr. Ford, look at the testimony from Judge Kavanaugh, there is no doubt in my mind, Harris, that Dr. Ford was a credible witness. I think it's impossible
to what she
for
said
us
she
to
could
believe
remember
that nothing happened to her, and that There was nothing that happened between the two of them.
All right.
We were glad to see the FBI investigation. I was certainly excited about that.
You must be the only one among
Well,
Democrats that I've talked to who even feels that way, Congresswoman, because, Congresswoman, there has been just vitriolic, just dripping with anger about how the FBI investigation was going, and you say you were excited to see it. I want to cut in just for a second.
When Senator Flake asked for the FBI investigation, I was excited that we were going to have one. But I am not familiar, based on my knowledge, training, and experience, with an investigation that falls short of interviewing the alleged victims, interviewing every witness that has been put forward, interviewing, going back to the subject, going back to Judge Kavanaugh, and getting his response to the new information that has come forward.
You've said your piece on that. I want to interject with just one quick thing, because I got to let you go.
My experience, I believe the investigation was not
I hear
complete,
you on that.
and I think it would have helped.
Representative Maxine Waters, though, and others in your party have put some things in the water, if you will, that look kind of like sharks swimming in terms of getting things back to a nicer place, a more congenial place where you can get some work done, better bipartisanship on Capitol Hill. Last question to you has to do with that, with the go out and verbally attack those who don't agree with you, and where that really puts us. And it puts some people in danger. Quick thought from you. You were a former police officer.
Look, verbal attacks have come from both sides of the aisle, unfortunately. That is not who we are as a nation. But Harris, I think it started when Judge Garland could not even get a meeting with senators on Capitol Hill.
So I hear a retaliation there, and I'm going to bring you back because I don't want to end.
So it started wrong. And so unfortunately, here we are. But we all do have an obligation, not just those of us in the Senate and in the House, but persons like you and others who report the news.
Okay, I'm going to step in because I have to let you go, Congresswoman.
Right,
but it's interesting that you went back to Garland, because that would be about
gap.
retaliation, and that would be about revenge. And I want to bring you back, and we can talk more at another time.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Sources again are now telling Fox News a top lawyer working with the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign provided documents to the FBI during the launch of the Trump-Russia investigation. How explosive is this revelation? And does it prove political bias was at play inside that agency? Plus, the showdown over Brett Kavanaugh firing up voters on both sides of the political aisle. I mean, you saw the Congresswoman with Merrick Garland for the Democrats. Hundreds of anti-Kavanaugh protesters arrested yesterday. How will the Kavanaugh vote impact the midterm elections? I will talk with a top Republican senator ahead as Senate Democrats make a last-ditch effort to stop Kavanaugh's confirmation. Fox News alert: with just 32 days until the midterms, the battle over Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh appears to be energizing both the left and now the right. The Republican National Committee tweeted this: thanks to our great supporters who want to see Judge Kavanaugh confirmed, the RNC had its largest fundraising day in the history last Sunday. Make your voices heard on November 6th. Meanwhile, Democrats and liberal groups are vowing to step up protesting against Kavanaugh, with a confirmation vote looming tomorrow. Hundreds were arrested in our nation's capital yesterday, and protests are continuing right now. In fact, Jillian Turner is live in Washington with the latest. Jillian?
Harris, I'm back here in the Senate Hart office building for much of today. This has really been ground zero for both pro and anti-Kavanaugh protests. Right now, I'm standing on a bridge right outside Senator Murkowski's office. You can see behind me here, there's about 50 or so Alaskans who have gathered here in the hopes of getting a word with the senator today. We're told many, if not all of them, have flown in from the state specifically to be here to register their discontent with Judge Kavanaugh and his nomination. In these crucial hours before tomorrow's vote, many of them are hoping for some FaceTime. They believe that if the senator has any last doubts, they can help convince her of their perspective here. I spent the last couple of hours before coming over here at Senator Jeff Flake's office, encountered folks, protesters of all stripes. Here's what two women had to say.
When I started hearing these accusations and seeing his testimony, and it became clear to me that he was being dishonest, I felt like I had to do more than sit at home.
I just so wanted to come to support Brett Kavanaugh. He's not been proven guilty. It's all false. He's not guilty. He is an innocent man.
Lots of emotions running high on both sides. There are two observations, things that really surprised me. In front of Senator Flake's office, first off, we encountered way more women for Kavanaugh protesters than anti-Kavanaugh protesters. The other thing, Harris, everyone, protesters of all stripes today have really been cool, calm, and collected. We haven't seen anybody rioting or rowdy, barely any yelling. It's a great day for democratic and free speech protest here on Capitol Hill.
Jillian
Harris?
Turner, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Senator John Thune, chairman of the Senate Republican Conference, joins me now. Senator Thune, I follow you in social media, and I know you've been putting out statements too. You are a yes on Brett Kavanaugh. And what is the mood like right now in terms of the other senators on Capitol Hill?
Well, good afternoon, Harris. We think that things are moving in the right direction, and we're optimistic that ultimately we'll get Judge Kavanaugh confirmed to the United States Supreme Court. But as you know, it's been a long process. We're 88 now days into this. The average length of a Supreme Court nomination to confirmation process is about 65 days, so it's taken a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But in spite of all the delays that the Democrats have thrown and roadblocks they've thrown in the way, we're going to get this vote tomorrow, and I think we're going to get this judge confirmed.
Real quickly, I want to just talk about, because I want to get to midterms, but I want to talk about the process now so that people will know what Saturday will look like. And we're getting word that you would vote anywhere in between 3:30 and 5 p.m. What happens between now and then?
Well, right now we're in what we call in the Senate post-cloture debate. And so the clock runs. It's 30 hours of post-cloture debate. At the conclusion of that time, you would have the final vote. Time can be yielded back. We don't expect the Democrats to want to do that, but it would set up a vote sometime late afternoon tomorrow, perhaps a little bit sooner, depending again on whether or not any time is yielded back. But we will know one way or the other for sure, for certain, by tomorrow afternoon whether or not Judge Kavanaugh is going on the Supreme Court. And we feel really good about the vote this morning, and it makes us optimistic with respect to the vote that we're going to have tomorrow.
You feel good about it? Sarah Sanders, press secretary, joined me moments ago. The White House feels good about it. We'll cover it as it happens. Let's talk about the midterm elections.
Okay.
Because when you have a record amount of fundraising, as the RNC says it has, around this one topic of a Supreme Court nominee, what does that do to energize voters?
I think what's happening out there, at least at the grassroots level, Harris, is people are really responding to this story across the country, and obviously on both sides. Both sides are energizing their voters and raising money. But I think in the end, at least as we look at it with respect to the United States Senate, we have a very narrow majority in the Senate today. We have an opportunity to grow that majority. And all the states where we're running competitive races are states where Judge Kavanaugh is very, very popular. And so we think that that's going to give us an opportunity as we head into these midterm elections to perhaps pick up a seat or two in the United States Senate, which would be great because it'll enable us to continue to move our agenda forward and working with the president and his team and hopefully with a House majority to continue to get good things done for the American people.
Well, and I would think that the American people in watching this situation too would better understand the importance of not having such a sliver closed politically. Because Lisa Murkowski, senator today, we think she's all but out, but we don't know. She said no to cloture. We're waiting to hear from Susan Collins. You may have less of that moving forward as you pick up more in your own party in the Senate.
It would be great to have a little breathing room. Every vote matters in the United States Senate. And this is what I tell, this is why I think the American people need to understand that their vote matters. Every vote matters when it comes to these big issues and Supreme Court nominations. It doesn't get really any bigger than that. These are lifetime appointments, and they will do more to influence the future probably of this country than anything we as politicians do. Politicians come and go, but the Supreme Court is really enormously influential in terms of the direction of our country. And so when you run for office, this is what it's all about. This is why you run for office, and this is why when people vote for president and they vote for United States senators, it has real and lasting consequences.
Boy, it's rare that you hear a senator or anybody really on the Hill say they come and go and it's really all about the people. I'm sure people sat up over their lunch right now just said, what did he say? Real quickly before I let you go, this whole process has gotten so vitriolic, and I'm wondering from everybody, I want to ask this question, how do we'll look to you, the nation will, to move forward. So what are first steps when this process, the midterms are over? What are first steps to move forward?
Well, first off, every time we have an election in this country, and we've had them every even-numbered year now, going back to 1790, that it's a chance for the American people to have their voices heard, and with that comes a new opportunity for direction and leadership in the country. I hope when it's all said and done, and the dust settles and the smoke clears coming out of this, that we can work together on an agenda that is good for the American people. And I frankly believe, in spite of all the the rhetoric that has surrounded the Supreme Court nomination, and the way that, in my view, our Democrat colleagues have run a scorched earth campaign to try and defeat Judge Kavanaugh, that we will work together constructively to do good things for the country. And there have been things that have happened, I think, as you know, this week. We passed a big FAA bill, a big opioid bill, all with large bipartisan majorities. So the work continues to move forward, sometimes gets lost in the distraction that is whatever the media happens to be focused on at the time. And I'm not suggesting that the Supreme Court is a distraction. It's an important issue, but there are other things going on right now that are good for the country, and where we are doing the work of the American people.
Yeah, people still listing health care. They want some answers on that. The President of the United States has said he might dip back into that too. Senator Thune, thank you. Great to see you.
You too. Thanks, Harris.
New developments in the Trump-Russia probe now, as a former FBI official reportedly has revealed that a lawyer for the Clinton campaign provided information about alleged election meddling. What it could mean for the investigation and whether it proves political bias was at play. Stay close.